When I was little, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I was sent down to my grandparents' house in North Carolina to visit my Nana and my Papa, my aunts and uncles and cousins. My grandparents lived on land that my grandmother was given by her parents, and they lived in a house that my Papa built. In the mornings, I would hear my grandmother humming her hymns and making her own breakfast. She'd make her coffee and her prunes and her cereal, and I would lay in bed listening to her. After she finished, she would make breakfast for Papa and me. We would sit down to tea and biscuits and sausage and eggs. We wouldn't talk much. I just remember being really comfortable, really content. After breakfast, Papa and I would go riding. Sometimes we would go to the post office to pick up the mail or go to the mall to watch the walkers and the shoppers, or sometimes we would drop in on one of his friends that were tending their own gardens and taking care of their hogs. And along the ways, he would point out a store that had closed or an abandoned building, something that used to be there that wasn't there anymore, or tell me about something he read in the paper about a new business that was coming to town. In the afternoons, we would go home. Papa would take a nap or do his chores in his garden. And then it was my turn with Nana. And sometimes we'd hop in her car and we would drive down the hill to the Piggly Wiggly or go to her sister's house and sit in her kitchen. Or sometimes she would put a bag between my feet and a bunch of corn on the table. And it was my job to shuck the corn so she could cook it and cut it off the cob and store it for winter. Nana would tell me stories too, but I really don't remember them. I just remember both of them sort of falling into their own monologue about whatever was on their mind, or sitting comfortably in silence, or just being happy that I was there and their grandbaby was trailing behind them. When I became a teenager, my visits became shorter and further between. And then in my 20s, I went to college and came home to visit. After I graduated, I was full of feminist theory and all this self-taught Black history. And I started asking questions about my own family's history, like, did Papa use that gun over there to shoot snakes in his garden? Nana said, no, Papa wasn't much of a hunter. I asked my mom and my aunts, if grandmother was a midwife for all the babies in the neighborhood that she delivered, how was she paid? Like, did someone give her a chicken or swap crops from their garden? They're like, no, they paid her with money. I asked about the beautiful quilts that were in my grandmother's cabinets. Some of them had wide strips, 2 colors each, that alternated in a beautiful pattern. Some of them were squares of mixed and matched fabrics with a solid color on back. And I said, did Nana sew these quilts with her sisters? Like, did they sit around in a circle and tell each other their secrets or gossip about the other women in church? No, she probably bought it from that lady down the street. I mean, she had her own business. I realized that all this history that I had read about the Great Migration, the Great Depression, and the Jim Crow South, and the wars, and the Civil Rights Movement, they were all jumbled up in my head. And the facts that I was looking for in my family's history to match what I had read in history just didn't really add up. Like, my family was just living their lives and forgetting the details along the way. I kind of thought I had lost a history that I had never had. But I don't hold on to regret. Sometimes I think about my 8-year-old self and I wonder, should I have listened more closely? Should I have asked more questions? Should I have rummaged through all those cabinets and drawers to know more than I know now? Instead, I just think about the future. I treasure what I do remember. I treasure my grandmother's quilt that I have. You know, it's navy blue. For those of y'all that can't see on the screen, it's navy blue and in back, and has these mix and match quilts and patterns. And I loved it so much that it's really tattered. I had to store it away for safekeeping. I think about the future, and I think about passing those quilts along to my children and grandchildren. I think about maybe when I'm an elder and have a little one trailing behind me, listening for stories, paying attention to that running monologue, sitting in silence, and creating memories. Thank you.